Hey, welcome to the Small Business Made Simple podcast, brought to you by socialmediaandmarketing.com.au. Being in business is never easy, but it can be simple, or at least simpler. Join me, your host Jen Donovan, every week where we focus on marketing, social media, and working towards simplifying your business. You with me? Let's do this.
If you're gonna dream it big, 'cause someone out there listening. Everyone's got a voice to give, and it's time I heard you whistling, 'cause there's no point at all, in dreaming small.
Way, hey there, my amazing listener. Welcome to the next episode of the Small Business Made Simple podcast. This episode is episode 292. Sometimes I have to tell you that I need to kick myself to think I've made 292 podcasts. Like, seriously, how have I still got something to talk about? But I have still got something to talk about because I have such an amazing get to have such amazing guests, and today is no exception. I have Fran Pratt on today, and she, believe it or not, loves sales as much as I love marketing. It's a great conversation. In fact, she's been quoted saying that marketing's gone rogue, which I totally disagree with. Anyway, as you know, or maybe you don't know, but April is all about business basics. That's the theme for the April podcast, and I can't think of a better basic than learning how to sell. So I look forward to you having a listen to my chat with Fran. But before we get into today's episode, there's a little bit of a sell. Who knew? I just wanted you to know all the ways I can help you in business besides listening to this awesome free podcast. There's an hour of power you can book with me, which basically means you get my brain for a whole hour to answer your questions, maybe get some accountability or some refocus in your business. There's also one-to-one coaching, which is a bit more of a in-depth and extensive way of working with me, where we can go over so much over such a short period of time as well. Or of course you can come and buy my 9-week marketing transformation program and my book, Small Town, Big Impact. They're just 4 ways that you can work with me. They are all on my website at socialmediaandmarketing.com.au. But hey, I just thought, seeing you're a podcast listener, maybe you are a little bit keen to do some work with me as well, or come into my world a little bit deeper. Of course, if there's anything I can do for you, or if you want something that I haven't got on offer on my website, please feel free to reach out and touch base, because I would love a chance to work with you. Now, as I mentioned, April is about business basics, and my guest today is Frances Pratt. And like I said, she thinks that marketing's gone rogue, and she talks about less marketing, more sales, or more sales, less marketing. I know, right? I still let her on my podcast despite the fact that she thinks that. I know. But in all seriousness, I love having conversations with people who are just as passionate about marketing as I am. Just as passionate about sales as I am about marketing. In fact, if you're super keen to hear more about sales versus marketing, then Frances Pratt and I are actually doing a LinkedIn Live together. So you'll find that on my LinkedIn profile. And basically the very subject is more sales, less marketing. And this time I get to put my case forward on the LinkedIn one, because I'm not interviewing her. We are both having a conversation together. Anyway, I would love for you to listen to this interview with Fran. So the problem Frances sees is that sales has become a word that business and people shy away from. Why? Because it's been disconnected from the deep understanding of the value of relationships between business and their customers. In addition, her sales work in many businesses, Frances has also completed a graduate certificate in change management and an MBA from Melbourne Business School. Coupled with this and her hands-on experience, where she's created a toolbox of techniques to help businesses better understand themselves and their customers, Because as a business owner and a company director, Frances really does understand the pressures of juggling cash flow, staffing, business administration, and basically it's often left to one person within that organization. But sales is her passion, and that's exactly what we're going to have a chat about today. So, when it comes to business basics, I guess there's nothing more basic than creating sales, right? Like, we literally do not have a business to market if we can't sell the product or service we're trying to sell. So, I hope you really enjoy this chat with Frances. I found it fascinating. And no, I didn't argue with her too much. I'm leaving that for the LinkedIn Live that we'll be doing. Anyway, I hope you enjoy the chat. Frances, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast to talk sales with me. I can't wait to have a sales versus marketing conversation with you. So thank you and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Jen. I'm excited. I'm always excited to talk about sales and selling. So, and it's not, I was talking to someone the other day, it's not sales or marketing. It's not one or the other. The phrase is sales and marketing. So we do need to learn how to coexist and love each other. And I really feel like it's not far away.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Now, for my amazing listener who's tuning in, there is every chance that Frances loves sales as much as I love marketing. So you are in for a treat with this conversation. But for my gorgeous listener who may not have come across Frances Pratt before or might just like to know a little bit more about you, can you tell us who you are, what you do? Start wherever you want.
Okay, so I'm one of 5 kids.
Wow.
Start at the beginning. And I'm a twin and I come from a family of introverts. I know, which is just quite amazing because I'm
Identical
clearly
twin
not
or
a fraternal twin.
Yep,
But I
okay.
do remember when we were about 12, Ali said to me, that's my twin sister, Ali said to me, Fran, you're dangerous, which I was very excited about at the age of 12. Probably am now, really. And I said, great, why am I dangerous? And she said, I know what you know. And when you're talking to other people, you don't lie, but you say things with such confidence that they think that you know more than you do. And I thought, ooh. And then I thought, many years later, fast forward, maybe I should always have been in sales because selling is confidence. And so, so I did spend 15 or so years in IT sales, all different hardware, software. I started selling cloud computing before the term even existed, or the term SaaS didn't exist. Like this,
right.
Yeah. And then for the past 13 years, I've been running my own business. And really that journey has been about helping my clients demystify selling because selling is something that's available to everyone. Yes, even you, that person who's like sticking their fingers down their throat thinking it's the worst thing ever.
Thinking, why has Jen brought this evil person onto her podcast?
So bad. But I have a thing. Did I tell you I'm just about to publish a book? Did I tell you that story?
Well, you have told me that story, but not my listener. So keep going.
So I've got a book coming out later this year called More Sales, Less Marketing.
Oh, straight to the heart. That's awful. All right.
And it's not against Jen per se. It's just, marketing's gone rogue and I think they need to be reined in. And I say that with such love and kindness. But the funny thing was, or not the funny thing, but the thing I was thinking about for your listener, that in the book I talk about 2 types of selling. I call it crocodile selling and great selling. So the reason I call it crocodile selling is we've all seen this person who tries to ram something down your throat, that sells at you, talks at you, doesn't listen, slimy. You just want to go and have a shower afterwards because they're so gross. We've all encountered that person who's either completely indifferent to you or just has dollar signs in their eyes and all they want is, an access into your wallet. But they are crocodiles. And just because crocodiles still exist on Earth, it doesn't mean we're in the age of the dinosaur. So that old way of selling, yes, it still exists, but it is not where we're at today. It's not even close to where we're at today.
And it
Today's
shouldn't be either, because we are really smart. We are past that. You know,
yes,
if I'm in, a big I'm not going to name any names, but let's just say I want to buy a fridge and I'm in one of those big department stores who sell hundreds and hundreds of fridge, and I'm there opening and shutting fridges, and I've been there for 5 minutes, and then some loser comes over to me and says, "Oh, you interested in a fridge?" And I'm like, "Good one. How did you work that out? I've only been here for 5 minutes. Like, have you got a better opening line for me?" It's kind of like, I like to think there's no dumb questions, but that's a dumb question. Get better at your job.
no,
Like,
I'm actually after a washing machine and I like this version.
yeah. It's like, anyway, that's my thing with salespeople is we are smarter than that.
Yeah.
And we need to get smarter with sales, because we can call those people out. You know, the guy last car that I bought wouldn't give me eye contact, wanted to sell the car to my husband. My husband's like, "I ain't got the money, mate. You're gonna have to talk to her." Get smarter.
Well, and the
Like,
statistics show that for all major purchases, and including cars, women are the decision makers.
yeah.
So these people are just not being trained properly. Just it makes me cross.
But it's also why we hate sales, because
Yes.
they're the things that it's like, where years ago when I had my retail business and I would get one cranky customer to 20 brilliant customers, and the cranky one is the one I'd remember when I came home to talk
Yeah.
about over the dinner table. We come across people who are great at sales every single day, but it's the crocodile, in your words, the stinky, sticky one that sticks in our mind, and that's what makes us go, "I hate selling. I can't sell.
Well,
I don't want to sell." So that's what I really want to dig down into today is, why do people hate selling? I think I've kind of said why, but your thoughts
no,
on
but
why. But also,
you are
what do you do about that?
you are absolutely right on track. And here's something that I want everyone just to listen and sort of process this through your brain. Okay. So I want you to think about that experience that Jen just talked about, where the seller was disgusting and you probably ran away in disgust. I remember when I bought my first new car, I was in my early 20s, and this sales guy said to me, what did he say? He said something like, "If you leave this lot, that price goes with it." And I know, right? Pressure tactics on I was on my own. I was probably 24. Like, go away. Anyway, I turned to him and I said, "Well, let me tell you something. Those pressure tactics aren't going to work for me. And I'll counter and say, I will never buy a car from this lot. You can take those tactics and stick them." And I walked. I've always been a bit feisty. So anyway,
Yes.
we've all got those mental images, right? And that's what we associate with selling. Okay. Now, shake it off, shake it off. Now I want you to think about a time when you walked into a shop or you were talking to someone, they were so wonderful. They listened, they were attentive, but not too attentive. They had a bit of a laugh with you, they were fun. They actually helped you find something that you needed, that you were interested in, and they went through that buying process with you. So what do you call that? So people don't call that selling. They say, "Oh, I had a really great buying experience."
Customer experience. So for me,
Customer experience. That's right.
for me, I call it my Tiffany experience. So if you asked me what my best memory of someone who sold something to me, I will tell you the story of when I was in Tiffany in Rodeo Drive. So for my 40th birthday, there was two things I wanted to do. I wanted to take my kids to Disneyland, and I wanted to buy something from Tiffany in Rodeo Drive. Now, the day we're at Tiffany's, like, I'm not dressed. I've only got a small suitcase. I'm not dressed for Tiffany's on Rodeo Drive. But I walked in, 3 kids out the front. I can tell you there is no ice cream or cafes on Rodeo Drive for children. So it's like 40 degrees. It's my husband's like tapping his foot. The kids are like, Mom, hurry up. I walked into there, and that lady could have given me a really bad experience where she could have looked me up and down and gone, ugh, what do you want? But she knew her role. Tiffany and Rodeo Drive, they get probably thousands of people like me every single day who want their Tiffany moment. She
Yeah,
knew
yeah.
that. She had been trained for that, and she gave me my Tiffany moment. Even though I only spent like $500 in there, she gave me the best customer experience that I could ever think of because she got it.
Yeah.
No other reason than she got it. She knew who I was as soon as I walked in the door. This girl wants her Tiffany moment. As soon as I opened my mouth, she's like, and she's a foreigner. Like, she doesn't even from Australia. She clearly wants her Tiffany moment. So that for me is just sales gold. You get your customer.
100%. 100%. And and I think the thing that I'm really interested in that is then how we associate that. So you don't go and say, I had a great selling experience, even though it was.
Mm.
You think about it as your own because it is your journey. And that's what great selling is. Great selling isn't my journey or the salesperson's journey. It's actually guiding their customer or the client on their buying journey. And everybody has it slightly different. Your Tiffany experience is different to the next person, to the next person. So as a salesperson, we have to be cognizant and available to listen to those words, but not just the words, all of the visual cues, the non-verbals. We have to listen deeply to all of those things so that we can interpret and check in and make sure that the customer is getting the experience that they want.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's no different to marketing in some ways. You've got to know who your who is. You've got to know who your
Punji.
customer is. And I
Yeah.
love that twice you have used my favorite word when it comes to sales. And I'm no sales guru, but I know this word is super important. It's the word listen. And listen to listen, not listen to talk back, but actually listen to listen.
Yes. And I've got a thing on listening. So people say things like you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth, so you should listen twice as much as you talk.
Oh, okay.
Have
Yeah.
you never heard that?
No.
Well, I take it to the next level. So when you're listening, first of all, you've got to engage your brain. You've got to be focusing in on the other person. You've got to be ready to listen. Secondly, you use your ears, obviously, to listen. But when we listen to people's words and their intonations and all of those sort of things, we've got to be aware that we're interpreting that through a lens of assumption, through assumptions that are built on our whole life. And there's nothing wrong with assumptions except if we take those as fact. So we've got to be filtering and be conscious of how we're filtering. We've also got to use our eyes because 56% of communication is nonverbal. So if you're just on the phone, 7% is words and 38% is the tone, the speed, all of those sort of nuances. But the vast majority is nonverbal. And so listening is also listening to their body language, listening to what they're doing with their eyes and their mouth and their feet. And that's why I really encourage people, if they're going to have tricky conversations or deep conversations or want someone to buy from them, eyeball them, get face to face. Don't do it over the phone or, God forbid, email. But lastly, so we've got all this going on. We've got our brain engaged, our ears, our eyes. But the last thing that we use when we're listening is our mouth. And that might sound counterintuitive, but what that sounds like is, hey, Jen, thanks so much for sharing your Tiffany story with me. What I heard you say was, despite it being 40 degrees and the kids and your husband waiting not very patiently outside, you walked in, you were probably hit with beautiful air conditioning, a smiling face, and you had your moment. And so when you use your mouth to listen, you're reinforcing what you've heard from the other person. And that helps to check our assumptions. Because I always coach my clients, if you hear an assumption in your brain, turn it into a question.
Yeah.
Don't.
Great.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, I think I'm actually stuck on sales track TikTok at the moment. That I get all these TikToks that are kind of like assumption based selling. So like the rich guy comes in, or the guy in the designer suit and wants to buy the car, and the other person comes in who doesn't fit the mold of someone who wants to buy that car, and it turns out the rich guy really doesn't have any money. He's just dressed for the part, and it's kind of like
Yeah.
just trying to make you get over those assumptions. I'm trying to get off that TikTok because I'm kind of sick of that storyline. But I've got to train the algorithm to do something else. But it is like the assumptions. I love that. If you feel that you've made an assumption, turn it into a question to get the answer to that assumption. I think that is a really big piece of gold in this conversation. There's been lots of gold, but that one really stuck out for me. Thank you so much.
My
You
pleasure.
mentioned at the start crocodile selling and great selling. So we heard what crocodile selling is. What's great selling in your mind? Like, have we already talked about it, or is there more to it?
We've kind of talked about it. There's 4 steps to me in great selling. The first one is we've already covered, listening.
Mhm.
So when I'm coaching people and they're walking into a sales meeting or phone call or whatever it is with a new client, I tell them you need to spend 85% of your time listening, probing, asking questions. So tell me more about that. Oh, you said this. What does that mean for you? Like, really dig in. So that's listening. The second part of great selling is what I call finding fit. Now, this is not an open license for you to start talking about yourself from the time you were born, like I did at the beginning of this interview. But it is about saying to your prospective client, thanks so much, Jen. It was really great to listen and learn more about your business or about what you're looking for or whatever it is. Let me summarize a little bit, and then if I get that summary point right, I'll check in with you, and then I just want to talk about how there's something that I might be able to help you with that helps with that particular problem. So I'm just going to use my business as an example. So I heard you say that you feel uncomfortable about picking up the phone. I totally get it. I totally understand that can be fearful. And I've got some really quick and easy ways to help you overcome that fear. And you also mentioned that once you're in front of people, you're really quite good, but it's getting in front of people and then learning what to do afterwards. Well, I've also got a fail-proof follow-up sequence that I'd love to share with you. So they're the 2 main things that I heard from our conversation. Is there anything else? Have I covered? Are they the 2 most important in your mind? And they'll say yes or no. And so if they say no, that's fine. I go, great. Well, tell me what is the most important thing then in your mind? So I don't care if I got it wrong, because that just gives me more time to listen.
Mhm.
But what I'm doing, it's not a laundry list of all the things I'm great at, because honestly, we'd be here forever.
Really?
But it is an application of the things that I know might be able to help this particular person with the problem that they have. It's a bit like if you go to the doctor, right? And you've got a broken arm, they don't say, let me look at your toes. They look at the problem.
Yeah.
So your client is asking you to do the same thing. is asking you to think about what sort of prescription might be the right thing for them. You are an expert, but that doesn't give you license to tell them everything about you and everything you're an expert in. So that's finding fit. The third thing that I talk about is lovingly looking for objections. So people normally call objections, they call it finding objections or handling objections. Well, you handle a snake, right? You bat away things like objections. And that's what crocodile salespeople do. You're looking for a 4-door car and they go, no, this 2-door one's perfect for you. And I'm like, well, what about the kids' seats? You know, and they don't listen. So I want you to look for objections. I want you to find them, because do you know what I feel like I'm on a bit of a soapbox. An objection is
Opportunity.
It means someone is thinking about buying from you. If they've got a question, it's actually a buying signal. Why would you bat it away? Like, how dumb is that? Anyway, and the great thing about lovingly approaching objections is you get to ask more questions and find out more about your customer. And the more you get to know your customer and the more they get to know you, the greater they trust you and the more likely they are to buy from you. So if I've answered one objection, the next thing I say is, thank you so much for asking me that question, because I could tell that, you know, that wasn't the easiest question for you to ask. Is there anything else? Because I want you to be 100% confident in buying this widget. And I want you to make a great decision for you. And so once you've answered one objection beautifully, then the others come, and probably the ones that are underneath the first one are the more important, because they're the ones we're less comfortable to talk about, but probably we care more deeply about.
Interesting.
Yes. So now step 4. In crocodile selling, there's the ABC of selling in crocodile selling called always be closing. I hate it. My ABC is always be creating value. So the whole thing, people will buy from you when you can show that you understand their problem, that you have something that is applicable to them, that they feel confident in you, the product, the service, the process, and that it's really valuable to them. That's the whole equation. So, and when a beautiful transaction happens, when great selling is happening, there's a win for everybody. You get a new client, the client gets what they want, society feels better, you don't have to snarl at your kids when you get home. Like, the whole world just is a more beautiful place when great selling exists.
Yeah, wow. What a beautiful way of looking at selling. I love those 4 steps. Thank you so much for sharing those in such great detail with us. So when I've actually just started to read through a report put out by SEMrush, and the report talks a lot about the trends that are happening at the moment. And one of the trends that is growing and will continue to keep growing is the fact that so many more people are buying online. Like, I think the data is at the moment, I think it's at 42% of all internet users in the US are now purchasing online.
Yeah, wow.
And it's actually social selling is what this stat relates to. So they're buying from Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, whatever. So how can you give any tips and tricks on how to sell when you actually aren't in front of the person, when it is done through maybe maybe you don't even get to see the customer. It's all about, making yourself easy to buy from the start, or the process, or the system. Or maybe it is done through emails or DMs now for, the Gen Zs of the world. Like, what are your tips and tricks around that?
So this is part of my premise in my book about more sales, less marketing. So even though they're online, they're still a person.
Yep.
And what you need to do in the first instance is build up your avatar. Do you really understand what the common objections are? Do you really understand what it is that they're buying from you? Because very likely you could be selling a scarf, right? But what the person is buying is something to dress up an outfit that they hate, or something to cover up the neck that they're not very happy with anymore. It could be about heat that they need. They're going into a colder climate and they need something. So you actually don't know what you're selling until you know what they're buying. And it's not just the logical. And in fact, everybody in the whole world buys emotionally first and then buys logically afterwards. Or wraps. I don't say buys logically because they've already decided. But what they do is they wrap the logic around their decision. And if you think about buying a car, right? So you go to all these different car yards and then you'll call the person that you like the most, which is an emotional purchase. And you'll say, hey, Sally, listen, love such and such a car. I've got a better price from Bob down the road, but I'd love to buy it from you. Isn't that what we all do?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mhm.
why? Because we've bought emotionally from Sally and we want to give her the opportunity. We don't want to buy from Bob, even though he's given us. So it's not logical.
Yeah.
So what I encourage people to do is to invite 2 or 3 or 4 customers to talk to them on Zoom or face to face. And that might sound really counterintuitive when we're talking about an online world. But what I want to know is, why did you buy from me? What did you love about it? What did you hate about it? Tell me about your journey. Where else had you been? Was I the first website that you looked at? Or have you been following me on Instagram for very long? Or whatever it is, like understand that journey. And what I really want people to do is you don't have to do that 1,000 times, right? And it's not just me talking about this. When the guys from Airbnb first, you might have heard of Airbnb, everyone.
Mhm.
But when they first, not when they first established their business, but when they first got serious funding, they made 2 big changes. The 2 founders moved to New York because that's where the majority of their listings were. And then every single couch, room, whatever, they went and stayed. So when they went to scale, they deeply, deeply understood their customer buying process. And then they were able to scale in a much more nuanced, meaningful way. And that's what I'm encouraging. Really get to understand your customer. And then once you know that pathway, not only do you know the pathway and then you can make that digital, but you've got these beautiful stories, right? So instead of getting on to your socials and going, buy from me because I'm wonderful, ha ha ha, you can say things like, listen, I've been talking to some of the people who've bought from me and I just wanted to share some of the things that they've said. This is what they really loved. When they got it home, this is what happened for them. One of the things that they suggested I change was this. And so I'm implementing that next week. I'm so excited to get that feedback. So what does this story tell people? It tells people that you're open, that you're listening, that you don't think that you're perfect, that you're open to suggestions, that you deeply care about your, like it says so much other than the story about how someone uses. And the other great thing, particularly for people who are a bit shy or introverted or hate selling, when you start telling a story about someone else, if I tell a story about a client that I've worked with, it sounds different because I'm so proud. I'm so proud of them. I'm so proud of them overcoming their fears. I'm so proud of all the things that they've done. And that sounds different in my voice. And if we go back to, 38% of communication is in the tone, then that really matters how we feel about what we're saying. So if you feel like a fraud, you will sound like a fraud. But if you can tell the story of your customer, it's a beautiful, wonderful thing.
Mhm.
Soapbox, sorry.
No, there is just little scatters of so much gold in there, because I know even myself, I had a program a few years ago, a course that I had created called Facebook Ads for Beginners. Now that course didn't sell very well because I didn't market it very well, because I just didn't feel like I was enough of an expert in that space to be putting myself out there. So I
Right.
had put my own fears around it, which then created not a good sales process because I was tentative at doing it myself.
Yes.
And that showed. And it showed in, it showed the lack of confidence. Like you said, selling is confidence. And I didn't have confidence in my expertise or in the program. So therefore, that definitely showed in the sales results that I had. I do have plans to revitalize that program now, because I'm many years down the track and I feel like there is still so much confusion out there. So kind of watch this space for that. But it is, the very first thing you said, that sales is confidence, that is just so true, and is true on so many different levels.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. Um, Fran, is there anything we haven't spoken about that you'd like to touch on just before we wrap up?
Well, you just reminded me of a blog post that I wrote years ago called Sales, It's a Con.
Now
Because
we're
it
getting
is.
somewhere.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's
yeah.
more sales, less
So, but the
marketing.
word,
Just doesn't.
yeah. But the word con actually comes from confidence. So they were called confidence tricksters or confidence men or women. And so it's a con, right? Because it is about confidence. But there's some really interesting things. And I just need to preface this by saying, please use these powers for good, not evil. But there's ways that con men worked on their mark that are instructive for us. So they layered. They didn't just, if you wanted someone to invest in a fictitious company, then they did things like they would put the logo of that company or a story about that company in a magazine that person read. They would have the logo on a car that went past them a few times. They would have presence of this story, of the logo, of the company, of the need for whatever it was that this fictitious company did. And then after all those things had gotten into the brain of their mark, then they would go and talk to this person. So I want you, so the good side of that is to layer. Telling one story about how great your customers are or what they've done or whatever is not enough. Listening once is not enough. It's about layers, and it's about reinforcing that you are a trustworthy, beautiful, wonderful expert. And part of that means that you have to sit in that confidence. So I often, when I'm working with people, they forget to prescribe, right? They're the expert, but they go, oh, well, then I'll leave it up to you. Or they put two options on the proposal, right? And I hate that. Sorry to everyone who does that, but I hate it. And I'll tell you why I hate it. Because if you go to the doctor and the doctor says, okay, we're going to do some tests, and I think you've got a broken arm, and we're going to do an x-ray, but if it is a broken arm, what we're going to do is we're going to put a cast on it. Okay, so they do the x-ray, and yes, it's broken. They don't then say to you, oh, well, you could just get away with a band-aid. Would that be okay? They don't check in with you. I mean, if you want a pink cast or a blue cast or a purple cast or a white cast, whatever, yes, you get some choice. But they are the expert. They sit firmly in that expertise, and so should you. And don't forget it just because you're asking someone to buy from you. Strong word.
Beautiful. Strong example for people to be thinking of. Yes. I need to even sit with that. Yes, I'm sure I will have questions for you after I re-listen to this when I go to put it out. Um, Frances, this has been such a great chat. I love your passion for sales. It's very mirrored my passion for marketing. So I think we make a good team. Even though we do perhaps just for space in people's minds, whether it be marketing or sales. But if my amazing listener wants to get in touch with you, where's the best place?
Probably LinkedIn is my
Yep.
favorite social. And I've got a website, but probably LinkedIn is best for connections.
Beautiful. Okay. I will put some links in the show notes, of course, so you can find them there. Otherwise, thank you so much for coming on and having a bit of a chat to us about the amazing world of sales.
You're very welcome. Thanks, Jen. Thanks for the opportunity.
Pleasure. So, did you enjoy that chat? It was a bit of a different conversation on a podcast that's pretty much dedicated to marketing, but I guess my podcast is really dedicated to growing your business. So, again, we don't have sales, we don't have a business. So, it was such an important conversation to be having, especially under the umbrella of business basics. So, what did you take away today, though, from the chat? I would love you to send me an email, a DM, jump into Like Minded Business Owners Facebook group, wherever you feel most comfortable getting to me to have a bit of a chat about what you actually took away from today. I would really love to know. And I know Frances would love some feedback as well. But that's it for another episode, for episode 292. If you love this episode and found it valuable, I would love you to take 30 seconds out of your day to maybe leave me a rating and a review, if that's possible where you're listening, or take a screenshot and share it on your socials. That could be another way of you supporting this free podcast. Or the ultimate potentially is share it with a friend who might like to hear a conversation about sales to help them improve their sales in their business. That would be super, both for me and for the other small business owner. If you're not part of my Like Minded Business Owners Facebook group, then please come and join in there. I would love to see you in there. Make sure you knock, 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 say hello when you get in there, and let me know who you are and what you do. Otherwise, I'll see you back here for episode 293. In the meantime, if we aren't social on social, come and find me on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, which is my favorite. I know I shouldn't have favorites, but LinkedIn really is my favorite platform. You can find me on TikTok. You can find me on Threads, just wherever you feel most comfortable. But whatever you do, remember, my small business peep, as my opening song says, there is no point in dreaming small.
No time like the present. Tell it like you feel it, say it proud, be true, and let us see you for the star that you are. No point in dreaming small.
I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, the Yorta Yorta people, on which I record this podcast and conduct my business today, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present. I extend this respect to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here with us today as well.